We don't believe that's the case.
Okay. The gentleman from Tennessee, Mr. Kustoff, is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman, and I appreciate Chairman Waters scheduling this very important hearing today. Mr. Sloan, I appreciate you appearing today. You've answered a lot of questions, frankly, a lot of tough questions about the problems that have existed at Wells Fargo that have led to several cases, a number of cases being brought against the company by federal regulators as well as by affected customers. For the record, I want to state that I clearly believe it's critical to our entire financial system that Wells Fargo continue to do everything that it possibly can to identify the customers affected, to compensate them accordingly, and most importantly, to make sure that this never happens again. I also think it's very important that Wells Fargo continue to cooperate with federal regulators and with federal authorities. And I think it's your testimony today that you're doing that. Given the number of scandals and admissions by Wells Fargo that there are customers who have been affected that you can't identify, what are you doing? What is Wells Fargo doing in order to try to identify these people who, when their accounts were opened by your employees, may have been opened with incorrect or frankly fraudulent contact information?
So, for example, in the retail sales practices matter, when we contacted over 40 million customers through 264 million different interactions, we sent them all of their accounts and said, let us know if any one of those accounts was opened inappropriately. And if that's the case, then we'll make it right by you. And we've had multiple interactions with those customers, and so we've done our best to ensure that any customer that feels that an account was opened inappropriately, that we make it right by them.
Some of these customers may find out on their credit reports, obviously, that accounts have been opened without their authorization. Their credit history, therefore, would have been impacted. Two simple questions that, frankly, require simple answers. Is Wells Fargo working with these customers to help repair their credit scores?
Oh, absolutely. What we found, generally when we opened up a deposit account, right, we didn't run a credit check. The instances that we're most concerned about would be in a situation where there was a credit card that was opened up inappropriately. In those circumstances, in 40% of the time when we did a credit pull, there was no impact on the credit score. In roughly half, the credit score actually went up. What we're concerned about are the situations in which the credit score went down. Where it went down, it generally went down between 4 and 9 points. That's a range. That can have a bigger impact on some because it generally impacted customers with higher credit scores more than customers with lower credit scores. But we're asking any of those customers to come in to see us so that if there was any impact, that we would make it right by them. In addition, those customers can also take part in the class action settlement.
All right. Let me ask it another way, because as you know, dealing with credit bureaus, it's not easy for the consumer. Is Wells Fargo working with the credit bureaus to try to help those customers?
Oh, yes. In any situation in which we found that by our error that we provided inaccurate information to the credit bureaus, we're correcting that information. And again, we're asking our customers to contact us if we believe that that's not correct. We believe that once we do that, it is corrected, but to ensure that if there's any impact.
On your website, on the frequently asked questions portion of your website, you acknowledge about the consent order being in effect, that you were aiming to meet the requirements of the consent order by 2019. We're now in March of 2018, rather. We're in March of 2019. Have you had conversations with the Fed or any other federal regulator about lifting the consent order or consent orders?
We have a very constructive relationship with all of our regulators. And by the way, I don't think I've said enough today that the feedback that we've received from our regulators on all these issues has been very helpful in terms of us making progress and improving risk, operational oversight, customer compliance across the board, every regulator, the Fed, the OCC, the CFPB, and so on. But in terms of our
Time has